What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my F122 MyTeam career mode. It has been a minute since we've had an update on this season, but this is episode 16 of this first season in F1 for MrDakota0 Racing, and we are renewing some sponsorships for the first time in this series, as well as preparing for the long stretch before the Singapore Grand Prix. Just setting our activity timeline here, and we are excited to continue to move forward in this season. One thing I'm going to bring up, kind of taking a step back, is that the next handful of episodes of this are actually going to be a bit different, mainly just because I sat down to do all of them, the recording for these, kind of all in one session. And unfortunately, all of the audio for these sessions was corrupted and lost. And so we're really just going to be focusing very heavily on visuals. And unfortunately, we're not going to have the game sound for the next handful of episodes, like I was saying. So I just wanted to get that out of the way early and mention that, as we'll be focusing primarily on my sultry tones here as we're advancing time here in the long stretch towards the Singapore Grand Prix, getting some of our stuff taken care of. Unfortunately, we have a couple of developments fail, but thankfully we also have a handful of things come in successfully. Trying to continue to move our way up the advancement on the R&D chart. We have a long way to go, and we finally feel like we're making some strong moves here. And I think we'll hopefully be shooting up this board here relatively quickly over the next handful of episodes, as well as we continue to try and push our way up the board, trying to develop as quickly as we can. As we head to our R&D chart, we can see that we actually get a supplier upgrade arrive. We get some new lightweight pistons. Some of our energy store upgrades fail, and so we'll get those restarted eventually, just making sure that even if we already spent it, we'll get that restarted and get that in here as quickly as possible. But now that we only have 500 or so R&D points left, we're really limited on what we can do here, as things are really starting to get quite expensive. And so right now, with a couple of major upgrades already in the works, we'll go ahead and leave it for another day. And now we'll head over to our facilities. We're trying to continue to build out our facilities as quickly as possible, and having a little bit of money available to us is important. So we'll go ahead and get some more R&D generation done now, as we will move forward to qualifying here around Singapore. And honestly, I'm not too high on our chances here in qualifying here around in Singapore, as these tight street circuits we really have struggled on in the past. And so we're going to do our best here. But considering our car's performance in previous episodes, primarily, Baku, we really struggled with some of those tight corners and those quick changes directions. Our big heavy car just really struggles here. So you can actually see in this is our best qualifying lap here in Q1 here. And you can really see that it's really struggling to get the car turned in on the line. We're really getting a lot of understeer, really struggling to get the car turned in and get the power down. So as we're heading towards the finish line of this best qualifying lap here in Q1, we can still see how much trouble that we're actually having with this car on these tight, twisty circuits here in the Singapore Grand Prix. So unfortunately, it looks like, if this is any indicator, as Carlos Sainz go fastest here in Q1 as of now. This looks to be a long weekend for us, as we're going to try and make the most out of everything we can. But unfortunately, this setup is just really not what our car is made for. And not that our car is made for much, but it is definitely not made for these tight, twisty, slow corners. We're really focused a lot more on those high-speed corners. And as we move up, and actually we try and get another lap here done in Q1, we briefly move up. But as we can see, as other times come in, we currently sit in P20. But nonetheless, we find ourselves about 0.3 of a second up here as we are making our way down towards the end of Q1. We run very wide into this turn, and we are trying to do our best to carry as much speed as possible. Any improvement would be better than nothing, because even if we don't make it out of Q1, trying to move up at all we can, especially out of the bottom of the pack, is definitely our goal. But as you can see, as we're making our way around these tight, slow speed corners, we're really seeing how much time we're actually losing in those corners. So as we come here and finish, we move up into P18, but unfortunately that won't be enough, and we will be knocked out of Q1 here. along with Piastri, really cementing the idea that this circuit really just does not suit us at all. You can see Piastri beats us by almost a full half second here. We know we have a long way to go, both myself as a driver as well as the car. But for now, we're going to go ahead and jump straight forward to the formation lap. Normally, I would allow the sort of circuit intro to play, but like I said, without the audio, it felt kind of silent and kind of a bit odd. So we're going to go jump straight forward to race Sunday here in Singapore. As you can see, we're going to be starting near the back, I believe. We took some grid penalties here, and so we're going to be starting at the rear of the field regardless. So we're going to try and take advantage as best we can here and see what we can do. As always, the real action is on race Sunday rather than qualifying for us. And so this is where we get to try and take advantage as best as possible. But we're focusing here on just trying to get and focus on things we need to improve on and try to continue to get some experience and some expertise on these things as we actually get a little bump from the Haas. And the formation laps have been a little odd recently. I'm not sure exactly what's happening here. As you can see, there's a car actually just poking out the right side of our screen, as that's actually the Aston Martin Sebastian Vettel, who should be lining up directly ahead of us. You can see that empty space there, but he decides, you know what, we need another formation lap. He needs that little bit of extra time to warm up the tires. And so we are stuck here in the formation lap waiting on Sebastian Vettel and the Aston Martin to come around and take his place on the grid. We're all absolutely fuming as after our formation lap, our tires are just getting colder and colder and colder. And so now we are just waiting. This is actually sped up by a few 100% as we are waiting for the Aston Martin to make its way around the circuit once more, getting a little bit of extra warm-up, man, as I believe he'll come in behind us here in a moment from the right side of the screen. And as much as he wanted to get that extra bit of warm-up, it seems as though the Aston Martin just wants to just go ahead and just park up right behind us and just give us a nice little nudge there as we're trying to figure out exactly what's going on. But we are lights out and we are away, very off kilter, thanks to the Aston Martin of Sebastian Vettel. As we continue to move up here into turn one, we get a nice big bump from Piastri. I think he just gets a bit out of line and is just bumper cars out here in turn one here in Singapore. As the Haas of Kevin Magnussen just bullies our way in there, we actually bump into Piastri ourselves. We kind of cut off Stroll here, trying to take advantage as best we can. And we definitely feel a bit of entitlement here as we get bumper card around. We decide we don't want to take any more of that from anyone else, and so we are trying to be a little extra aggressive here as we send one up out on the outside of Daniel Ricciardo. We're actually going to send a couple of cars here as Yuki Tsunoda also gets in our way. We are feeling high and mighty here at the beginning of Singapore, but at the same time, we know we have to make these moves now, because once we get into the thick of the race swings and these tires start to go off, we are really going to struggle here in these slow and medium speed corners compared to the rest of the field. And so we need to make as many moves as we can now, trying to take advantage as best we can on these as the cars are all grouped up here, as we find ourselves on the rear bumper of Mick Schumacher in the Haas, trying to find our way around Singapore. As Yuki actually sends one back up the inside, and we actually get caught behind Mick as well as Yuki, and Yuki retakes that position, and we'll just settle in behind, trying to do the best we can here. We debate on sending one back in on him, but we decide better against that, as it probably wouldn't have gone the way we quite wanted to, as we just were a little too far away to really send that kamikaze dive down the inside of Yuki in the AlphaTauri. So once again, we are settling now here in P15, up a few spots considering where we were, but at the same time, we know that it is going to be a long race and we have a long way to go here. But as we finish lap one, we settle into P15, and now it's time to chase on the pack as Daniel Ricciardo is trying to send one up on the inside of us as we try and do our best to hold him off, as Oscar actually enters the pits. Seems like he got a bit of damage here in lap one. And Daniel actually successfully gets to move on it. We try and do a bit of a switchback, trying to force him towards the inside so we can keep the racing line. And Daniel probably wisely decides to back out of that corner and give us a little bit of space as we actually jump forward quite a few laps, as there was quite a boring first stint here. And this is kind of the first action we've seen in a while as Daniel sends one back in on us, as our tires are definitely beginning to go off and we're trying to hold position. As you can see, we moved up a position here or two due to damage from other cars having to make pit stops, as well as, I believe, a retirement. And so we actually find ourselves just a bit outside of the points positions here. Although if you look up there to the to the timer of Mick Schumacher, we are well outside of fighting for points as of right now. But nonetheless, as Daniel starts to put the pressure on us by pulling away, opening up that about 1.5 second gap, we are now being pressured from behind by the Haas of Kevin Magnussen, as we can really feel our tires start to really feel the effects of these tight, twisty, slow speed corners as we'll move forward here to lap 12. We managed to hold off Kevin for another few laps as we enter our pit window here, and we will be moving on to the hard tires here around Singapore. It's going to be an interesting call here, as we definitely have trouble warming up the hard tires as well as other teams, and especially on such a slow speed circuit in certain instances. This is going to be a very interesting stint for us as we try and do our best to hold on as best we can. We did find ourselves 2 places outside the points there thanks to pit stops, but now we find ourselves down in P20 with the only person behind us, our teammate of Oscar Piastri, who had to pit on lap 1 at the end of lap 1 due to damage on the opening lap, a full 50 seconds behind us. And we find ourselves a full pit stop behind the AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly and 22 seconds behind the Aston Martin of Sebastian Vettel now. And so we know we have a long way to go. And you can actually see there on the MFD that we actually have a bit of front wing damage that we were kind of expecting to get replaced on that pit stop, because it really is starting to feel it really badly, even more so than our car normally was in these turns. We are really starting to struggle to feel that front end really turn in and get rotation on the car. And you can see that it's definitely going to cause us issues here as we jump forward now to lap 26. Piastri has actually caught up to us at this point, and we had actually pitted at this point for some softs, trying to see if anything to do. We tried to get that front wing fixed. We ended up getting that fixed. And so now at this point, we are really just trying to see what our car can really do. I think at this point we know that we are actually out of the race, potentially trying to play around for some fastest lap shenanigans, even though our car is definitely not the fastest car on the circuit at all. And Piastri is actually giving us a harder time than we initially could have thought. As we look behind him, Pierre Gasly actually joins us on the softs, potentially trying for some fastest lap shenanigans here with only, a handful of laps remaining in the Singapore Grand Prix. But Piastri is actually giving us more of a hard time than we had initially anticipated as we tap the wall there. And this really is a nightmare scenario for us, as our team is currently running P20 and P21, or P19 and P20 rather, here in Singapore, and really, really feeling the pressure of these slow speed corners just really not suiting our car at all, as we at this point are just trying to play for pride more than anything. Give Piastri a little bit of experience as we get a little loose on the exit of that corner, and that'll do it for us as we actually get a VSC for our spin into the wall there. We lose our front wing once again. We actually damage our rear wing as well. And that is not what you want to see here in Singapore, especially when you're trying to do some things for pure confidence, to say the least. And at this point, I think that'll probably do it for us here in Singapore. I don't know how much use it really is to keep going at this point, as we will now fully find ourselves well outside the pace. We will enter the pits here, as we actually do run a little understeery out of over the curbs of the pit lane, and we will enter the pits here, get this fixed, if we wanted to. I think we'll go ahead and get it fixed, because we're gonna have to replace the wing anyway. I think we ultimately decided just to continue on playing around with a fresh car and some fresh soft tires here, even with that rear wing damage, we're just going to continue to, I think I'm using this more as an opportunity to practice on these slower straight circuits, these slower, tighter street circuits, like we'll see at Baku and Jeddah, and kind of these slower, tight, twisty corners. We need as much practice as we can get. And what better practice than to run 40 seconds clear of the rest of the competition, as you'll slowly get lapped by those running ahead. You can see we actually worked the time to Piastri down slightly, running at about 36 seconds behind. But with only 2 laps left here, we know that our weekend is all but finished. And here soon we will, I believe it's on this lap, we make the decision to go ahead, retire the car, not incur any more wear than we really need to. We got a good set of practice in for myself personally, but we will retire the car here well off the pace, and probably should have retired a bit earlier if we're looking at this point in the season. No extra wear as necessary, but nonetheless, we got some good practice in regardless. We will retire finishing well off the pace, as well as Piastri finishing well off the pace. But nonetheless, we will wrap things up here as the Scuderia celebrates another win for Carlos Sainz here, as Charles does not end up winning here in Singapore, and the Spaniard of Carlos Sainz gets the win here, further solidifying Ferrari's lead in the constructors. Charles continuing to build his lead, even though finishing in P3. Definitely not a bad weekend for the men in red. I couldn't tell who finished there in second alongside the podium, so we will see here in a moment when we move on to the podium celebration. But nonetheless, Ferrari's continuing its absolutely dominant season here, in our first season here in the Formula One paddock. Nonetheless, it looks like George Russell will end up coming home to finish here in P2, giving Mercedes a solid podium for them on their bid for this season. But the Scuderia is running away with it, and they will continue to perform very admirably as we wrap things up here in Singapore. For us and our team, a very, very disappointing weekend, but we kind of came to expect that to a certain degree, as our car truly and utterly struggles in these slower, tighter street circuit style courses. And so it's something we definitely need to work on. So as we look at our final standings here, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen round out the top 5. Oscar and I finished P19 and P20. Only beating out Yuki Tsunoda and Fernando Alonso, who I believe ended up DNFing well earlier in the race. So we take a look at the standings there. We hold on to P10 in the driver's standings. Definitely have a long way to go, but nonetheless, we are continuing to fight as much as we can. And Charles absolutely running away with the drivers. For the constructors, we still sit in P7, still absolutely within a shot of P6 in the constructors, but nonetheless, we are going to move on here, hopefully burn the tape from this one, move on to the next one. But for now, that will do it for me here. This has been episode 16, and we'll see you guys in the next one, where hopefully we do a little bit better.